So I'm going to be talking today about how to deal with the highs and lows that inevitably come with working in sales, and really try how to get to a point where you don't burn out, but also you can maintain a more consistent level of performance. Now, as James said, I started my career in management consulting. It was mostly PowerPoints, Excel sheets, and incredibly late nights. And there were very few highs and lows. It was mostly a pretty dull experience. But luckily, I very quickly traded in my dull consulting job for a far more exciting career of B2B media sales. And I loved it. It made me feel alive, and it was incredibly exciting, but it came with extreme highs and lows. And for the first time, I experienced the pitfalls that come with that. I remember vividly in my first month, the cold call that I made where I agreed a 5-figure deal, and the extreme euphoria that came with that, followed by a complete pit of despair when they never signed the contract. And my first year of sales was pretty much like this, kind of yo-yoing between highs and lows and good results and bad results. And I started my first project by having a successful project, then complete car crash, followed by a record-breaking project. And although I was trending up and I became a top performer, I was incredibly inconsistent. And these extreme emotions are pretty much akin to that old adage of champagne and razor blades, so to speak. I quickly realized that these highs and lows were things that I needed to manage if I was going to have a long-term career in sales. Otherwise, I was going to very quickly burn out. My first year might have been my last year. Now, aside from the mental kind of anguish that these highs and lows can cause, it also can be complete poison for your sales cycles. And I don't know where this quote is from, but I think it's pretty true that when emotions run high, logic runs low. You can't make the right decisions in your sales cycles, as well as you can't keep your head. Now, I'm going to talk about some of the things that I learned over the years that I've been in sales that have helped me better manage these and maintain a more consistent level of performance while also avoiding burnout. Now, the first thing is that if you're having some success in sales, but you're still experiencing these highs and lows, you're probably at a stage where you're unconsciously competent, which is a good place to start. But the problem is that you're unaware of the things that you do that lead to success, which can often leave you surprised about the outcome of events, good or bad. You think they're going to sign and they don't sign. You don't think they're going to sign and they do sign. And this is what creates these kind of extreme emotions and the stress. And what we want to try and move to is a point where you can almost predict the future to some degree, where you're consciously competent to the point where you know what drives your success, you know what actions make you successful and what's likely to happen. And this is an ongoing process. It's a very difficult thing to do, and I don't think anyone can fully master it. But the things that I've been focusing on have really helped me try and achieve as close to this as possible is examining and reflecting pretty much everything that results in a significantly positive or negative reaction within a sales cycle. Consistently look at your own game and the minutiae points and actions that you can change that will drive the right results and remove the things that aren't driving the right results. Secondly, don't just listen to your manager, but also ask for feedback from customers and prospects. Try and understand what their feedback is about you. I'd also watch back your calls and meetings if you can. Look for trends, look at the body language of your prospects when you're speaking, trying to understand what you shouldn't do and what you should do going forward. The second thing is pretty much a cliche, but I think it's very true, which is that you should focus on the process and not the outcome. And there's a bunch of things we can't control in sales, and there's a bunch of things that we can control that also matter. Now, the things we can't control, forget them, we can't do anything about it. The things that we can and matter, that's what's going to drive your outcomes. And really the actionable thing here is instead of thinking about your number, your target, whether the deal is going to close, think about on each individual deal, what is the next best action that you can take that will drive the deal forward. And all of these little actions will start to add up over time so that you can get more consistent results. And you don't worry about whether it's going to close or not, but you just worry, am I doing the right behavior? Am I taking the right action? Am I being the right salesperson? And then finally, try and separate your self-worth from your quota attainment. I know everyone kind of knows that saying, you're only as good as your last quarter. And I know a bunch of salespeople that internalize this. And I think the challenge with that is if you internalize that, you live in a constant state of anxiety. You're always trying to beat the last quarter no matter what, and never kind of being able to accept any losses. And these losing streaks and hot streaks are a real thing. Like if you close a big deal, then you close lots more deals, and then you have a bad deal that goes awry, and then suddenly you're on a losing streak and you keep losing. And really what we want to do is get to a state where it's more consistent. And I think the thing that we can do is remind ourselves of the wins when things get tough. I often, if I have a really bad deal that doesn't close, listen back to a call that was particularly good and kind of remind myself that I can do this. I would also try and focus yet again on your behaviors and your activities rather than the number. Define yourself, value yourself on what you do, not on your number, because over time in the long run, if you do the right things, if you take the right actions, it will result in quota attainment. Just because you have a bad quarter doesn't mean you're a bad salesperson. Now, we've all had these big losses, I'm sure. Deals that we've worked a year on or years on, and we think we've run a brilliant process, and suddenly it just blows up from something totally out of your control. And the reality is there's going to be many wins and losses along the way. Sales is an infinite game. It's not a finite game. You can't win or lose it in a year. And if you do have one of those big losses, those are the things that can set you off on tilt. And at that moment, that's when you have to remember that if you roll the dice enough times and you're taking the right behaviors, in the long run, you will win. And as long as you take that to heart, it will help you keep sane in those really despairing moments. Now, zooming out, this kind of mindset and kind of altering for this can have a huge impact on your earnings over a 7-year period, for example. Instead of having kind of big highs and lows in earnings and kind of having stellar years and then burnout years, what we really want to try and do is go from those extremes to smaller swings of more consistent performance. And these principles should get you there. Now, just to summarize, there's really 3 things that I would focus on. Firstly, focus on becoming consciously competent. So examine your actions consistently. What produces positive or negative results? Ask for feedback from prospects and listen and watch your calls again. Always review those important calls and make sure you did the right thing or make sure that you can improve upon it. Focus on the process, which is what is the next best action on each deal, not your quota. Just focus on that minutia and it will add up. And finally, remember you're not your quota. If you have a bad quarter, you're not a bad salesperson. Your actions over time is what matters. And in the long term run, you'll win if you focus on that. And that's it.